Hallo and welcome to Das German Kritic. But hey, außer mir macht's ja keiner. When I was growing up in the early 2000s, yeah, let's not kid ourselves here. I was a pretty horny little fucker, much like everyone else.
And, thankfully, German TV gave me and other teenage wankers enough material to work with until we were old enough to actually go into a Beate Uhse shop. Of particular note here is the ZDF network, as well as the privately owned Kabel 1 and Vox.
Yet, the spank material in question did actually vary greatly from channel to channel.
Kabel 1 usually aired low-rent, low-budget skin flicks like Super Hornio Brothers or Jane Baum. ZDF, on the other hand, showed its spank material in a series named Sommernachtsfantasien, or Summer Night Fantasies, which, more or less, consisted of erotic cinema.
You know, things like Eyes Wide Shut, Lucia Il Sexo, Lie With Me, movies like that. Movies that do have erotic content and subject matter, but aren't actually classified as porn per se.
And then there was Vox, which aired its erotic content under the brilliantly named erotischer Spielfilm, the erotic feature heading. This consisted primarily of French softcore porn movies with a somewhat decent production value and dubbing. Basically the middle ground between ZDF and Kabel 1.
Yet, the film that we're going to take a look today is the only one that actually stayed in my memory all these years. And I think I know why that is.
Tagebuch der Lust, The Diary, or Cahiers Intimes, is one of the strangest films I've ever come across. Let me just show you the OFDB page for this thing. The original title is in English. The countries of origin are Germany and France. The main actress is French, and the director is either German, English, or French. I couldn't really figure that part out.
Also, the entire original dialogue of this film is actually in English. So, with all that said, let's take a look at Tagebuch der Lust, The Diary, Part 1. Because, of course, this is a quadrilogy. And since this is a porn, the film adequately starts out with people fucking.
Okay, the film, that is the actual plot, begins with our main character Anna, played by Lila Baumann, waking up and writing in the titular diary.
And, oddly enough, I have to give the film some credit for that. I mean, telling the story entirely, or at least mostly, in flashback is moderately original. You know, for a porn.
Through a voiceover, we're told that Anna's husband is suffering from some sort of affliction and that this has taken a toll on her love life. We then travel back in time, where we're introduced to Anna's friends at college, as well as Oscar, played by Kestrel Boyle. We basically find out that her friends like playing stupid sex games and that everyone basically wants to fuck Oscar.
Also, since Oscar obviously isn't Anna's husband, are we to expect some conflict?
Cut back to Anna as she writes in her diary once more.
We had been taught that we had to remain chaste. I didn't realize that I was in love. I was ashamed at having let myself be carried away with the strength of my pleasure. A feeling of fear and disgust grew in me over the summer, towards Oscar, and towards men in general.
This feeling is then exemplified by this scene in the study hall, where Anna and Oscar bicker only for her to finally shove him into the friend zone. We're then treated to another scene with Anna and her shithead friends. What are they discussing? How to manipulate boys once they've fallen for you, of course.
Also, we get this, it's really just a throwaway line of Anna alluding to the fact that she may like sleeping with girls more than with boys. And again, I may remind you, this film takes place in 1936, where homosexuality is still a criminal offense.
But in this film, it's just an excuse to have a lesbian shower scene. Through a voiceover, we're then told that Anna sees Oscar with another girl and thus decides to, quote-unquote, get him back. This leads to a May scene which, granted, is moderately funny.
You know, for this movie anyway.
The two find each other in a yard with a conveniently placed sundial where they finally talk out their differences. But not before Oscar makes this comment.
This modern twaddle about the independence of women and all these ridiculous ideas. It's just a fashion. It has no future.
Okay, so this is why I have a problem with this comment. I mean, let's do some basic math.
The film is set in 1936. Let's assume Oscar is 18 or 20 years old. This puts Oscar's birth year at 1916 to 1918. Consequently, the bulk of his developmental years, i.e. his teen years, took place during the late 20s and early 30s. Exactly the time that women officially got the vote and started shaping politics in their favor.
My point is this. Unless Oscar comes from a very conservative household, I don't think he'd have that many problems with first-wave feminism. And the former is neither implied nor hinted at anywhere in this movie.
So Oscar finally tells Anna that he loves her and that he'll do absolutely anything for her. And what does she demand as a testament of true love? Well, what do you think? This is a porn. She of course demands to see his dick.
Remember, kids, this is the 1930s. You couldn't just send someone a dick pic. Oh no. You actually had to drop trowel right in front of the person.
So after watching two lesbians fuck in front of a lit fireplace, we then get a scene where Anna's father comes to visit, and the only reason why I mention it is because of this joke.
Now, I don't know whether this is an established joke or something, but if it isn't, then this movie just ripped off Austin Powers 2.
Speaking of shagging, Oscar then informs Anna that he's going away to one of Britain's many colonies for business purposes and wants something other than a mere photograph to remember her by.
And what does she give him in remembrance? This is a porn, in case you haven't noticed. What do you think she's going to give him? I mean, the only difference here is that this is Anna's first time.
So halfway through the movie, we're introduced to our second male character named Jeffrey, played by Jason Davies.
And as weird as it is, you know, for this movie, this guy actually has some minor character development.
Through voiceover by Anna, we're told that he comes from a quite conservative family, that he ditched an arranged marriage, and that he came under fire by his peers for doing so.
And it's really weird because this is the only time, at least in my memory, that this movie tries to be historically accurate in any way, shape, or form.
Yet, all is not well, as after Jeffrey's introduction and another gratuitous sex scene, Anna receives a troubling letter from Oscar.
My love, my life is here. I can't see myself living in England anymore.
and this is not the place all the time to raise a family. I won't come back. Do not wait for me. Please forgive me. Oscar.
This, of course, catches the eyes and ears of Jeffrey, who then spends the next few months courting her. We then get this scene where he finally tells her that she needs to let go of Oscar before asking her to marry him. Rather spontaneously, I might add.
I mean, wow! I didn't think it was possible for anyone to give a quicker proposal than the Dragon Lord, but somehow this movie does it.
Ironically, after that, we get a legitimately good scene where Jeffrey defends his proposal in front of his conservative parents and equally conservative sister. The scene itself is fine as it is.
However, I will say this. For me, this entire situation is a bit too similar to the familiar situation in Downton Abbey. You know, the conservative father figure and the also quite conservative sister figure who is also named Mary.
So Jeffrey and Anna eventually do get married very quickly.
And when Anna says quickly, she means it as in, cut to the next scene and they're married quickly.
But there's trouble brewing in paradise, as shortly after they're married, Oscar returns back to England together with a letter expressly for Anna. However, Jeffrey gets hold of it and, after another superfluous sex scene, decides to leave in order to, quote-unquote, meditate. Of course, Jeffrey does no such thing and uses it as an excuse to seek out Oscar. The two have a falling out, during which Jeffrey pulls the gun on Oscar and kills him. After that, Jeffrey puts the gun to his temple and pulls the trigger.
Spoilers! He actually survives that. The only downside, he's essentially paralyzed from the waist down. Sort of.
Now, I don't know if you can survive a headshot the way Jeffrey does here, but the mere fact that several people throughout modern history have actually survived something like that makes this a bit more believable. We then come full circle, and the rest of the film takes place in the present. And the end of the film is essentially that. Anna and Jeffrey coping with his affliction until part 2.
Yet, there is one thing that I do want to mention before we wrap all this stuff up. And it's the fact that I again have to bring up Downton Abbey and have to ask the writers if they've seen this movie and decided to steal some of the ideas.
What do I mean by that? Well, in season 2, Matthew Crawley, one of the main characters, also gets paralyzed from the waist down. And, just as in this movie, the issue of a resulting impotence is brought up. Also, Matthew's affliction spontaneously heals, much like Jeffrey's does in the sequel.
I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. So, this was it for the first porn review on this program, and despite it being a rather, well, let's be honest here, quite shallow film, it does have some good stuff.
Firstly, we should be thankful for the fact that this movie even has a plot. It's a thin plot, but it's existent. Secondly, I do have to point out that Lila Baumann is genuinely very pretty, and not just in a porn sense. Shame, though, that she didn't do anything else apart from the Diary series.
Next, even though I obviously couldn't show you any of them, I did actually enjoy the music used in the various sex scenes quite a lot. I mean, you got some piano going on, you got some jazz music, and weirdly enough, it all does seem very period specific. Okay, so the way that I usually do these reviews, especially after something like episode, or essentially everything after episode 25. I do plan on doing it the style. Keeping that style is I usually watch the film, obviously, and while I do it, I record it. Basically make screenshots of the film like every 3 seconds or something, so that I have enough screenshot material to work with. Then after like a day or two, I watch it again. Then I take the actual notes. And then based on those notes, I write the actual review to the movie or the episode or whatnot. I don't even need to do that here. I'm serious. This is the easiest film, at least in terms of pre-production, for me to do. I literally just had to cut out all the parts where people be fucking. So, in the end, what I ended up with was about 45 minutes of pure plot content, which honestly is kind of impressive considering that Garden of Words is also like 45 minutes, and that's a feature film. However, despite all the good stuff in this quite shallow film, there are of course things in it that just don't work.
And the biggest problem this film has is its historical inconsistencies regarding some of the characters' dialogue and actions.
And yes, I know that this is a porn. But this movie isn't something like Super Hornio Brothers, and it's not something like Lucia either. It's something in between.
It wants to be an erotic period piece, but also a low-rent skin flick that was shot in a day or two. And it's really weird when you get something like Jeffrey's somewhat believable character development, and in the next scene, you have hot lesbo action going on.
And the last two things that I want to mention here is that A, this movie has scenes that go absolutely nowhere, like the scene with Anna's father, and that B, the entire series itself goes absolutely nowhere. I'm serious. I have no idea and no recollection of what happens after part 2.
All in all, the diary isn't that bad per se. I don't think you can actually buy the DVD, but I'm pretty sure you'll find it online eventually if you just look hard enough.
So this was Das German Kritic, and in the next episode, we're off to the high seas, ladies and gentlemen, in search of fish and salt and romance for some reason.